Oh, good morning. It sorry, it's actually 10:30. I'm really tired and I have a lot of thoughts and I am scrolling on Spotify to find the best music that will not trigger the YouTube copyright algorithm for us to discuss this. So, I'm just going to put on the Interstellar soundtrack on loop because that's what I listen to whenever I'm about to have a panic attack. So, give me 1 second. Honestly, I will say not many inventions have made my life better recently, just like in the general scheme of things. But my HomePod, I think it's so cute. I really love my little HomePod. Watch me say this, and then it doesn't even play through my HomePod, and it makes me look like a cuck. Um, 1 second, please. YouTube, please do not copyright this because I am saying stuff, so technically it's not the song. Okay. Here we go. So let's talk about openAI and the issues with AI doomerism in the context of like trying to figure out what actually went down. So as of recording this, it is Monday. Here is a blow by blow recap of the events. And yes, I am coming to YouTube to talk about this because I only have like one startup friend that I'm really close with, and it's Valkyrie, and I feel like everybody else is just very annoyed by my constant criticism of tech, but also the fact that like realistically I'm susceptible like a Wall Street Bets Reddit user or a 4chan user. Like I'm online, I'm a heathen too. I have interest in these things even if I don't necessarily ideologically agree with the people behind it because I'm fascinated by the dynamics of the valley. However, okay, it's Monday night, Friday. I'm driving to Oregon. I'm with my dad, it's Thanksgiving. I'm having Dutch Bros for the first time. This is really important. I live in a very remote area of Washington and we don't have Dutch Bros over here, like, at all. And it's been terrible because when I lived in Oregon for the past, like, 3 years prior to this, I used to drink Dutch Bros every day. So I've been really having an identity crisis, and I got my first Dutch Bros since I moved here in October, and as soon as I got it, I saw that openAI had kicked out Sam Altman from this terrible, okay, not terrible, that's not nice, from this very, not confidence-inspiring Instagram post. I'm looking for it specifically. Yeah, so I was just like scrolling through and then Cyber Magazine was like, Sam Altman fired. And I didn't even recognize that was him. And I was like, what is going on here? And so OpenAI board fired Sam Altman. Ilya, something happened. He was on their side. Allegedly, the CEO of Quora had like a competing OpenAI project a couple weeks ago, and he's on the board, and then it's just a clusterfuck. So pretty much like Sam leaves, he comes back, he's like pretty pissed about it, everybody is pretty startled. I'm recounting this from my memory, I'm not like recounting this from sources, so fact check me. But pretty much they're like, Sam, you gotta go. They release this they released this they released this PR statement on their blog, and it's pretty much like, Sam just was not like consistently candid in his communications with the board, and everybody was like, what the fuck does that mean? Because usually like PR releases are very like, there's a lot of social cues and a lot of layers of nuance in corporate speak where like the nicest thing you've ever read can basically be like a terrible thing, like a terrible rejection, and then like the most legally threatening thing you'll ever read is like, oh, that's not even legally applicable, like don't even worry about it. So that's decoding startup layers. But for a PR announcement, or like for just like a letting go announcement. Usually it's like, I have decided to move away from like being the CEO of Bad Bitch Company 420 to join like a new venture or to focus on my family. So this being just like, maybe I should full screen my face a little bit more. I have my aquarium light here so I look a little bit like a glazed donut. But so pretty much this was like very vicious from a PR comp standpoint. I wasn't really like, I thought that was very unprofessional personally. I would never oust anybody like that, honestly, especially a cult founder, considering we really haven't had like a cult founder that the tech community strongly relates to, like, since Elon or since Mark Zuckerberg. But I think a lot of those are very ethically fraught figures, and I feel like a lot of Gen Z people are more like latching on to Sam Altman because they see him as like a better, like, I don't know, just like a different person who's a little bit younger and who kind of understands these issues a little bit more without all of the history of like scandals and issues. So he has a lot of people rooting for him. So he's gone. He comes back to talk to the OpenAI board. In the meantime, Ilya switches sides. Mira, who is the interim CEO. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering anybody's name, by the way. I'm like not necessarily in AI circles 24/7. I'm just really into Succession, and Succession is over, so this was my life. But Mira, who was the CEO appointed by the board, tried to get Sam back in, and like a bunch of people switched over, and then I think like 500 people out of 700 employees signed a thing saying like that they like would leave and they would like do other stuff if Sam wasn't reinstated. Sam didn't get reinstated. The ex Twitch CEO Emmett Shear got instated, and I got an email from 404 Media today that Emmett Shear was actually a character in a Harry Potter fanfiction about effective altruism or something like that, which of course it is, because effective altruism follows AI ethics like a fucking 4chan guy follows Instagram models to be weird. Like, it's frankly a little crazy. So, back to it. Yeah, so we are having all of these reverberating discussions around the most recent news, which is that Sam is not going back to OpenAI. The girlies are fighting. Smackdown in the Twitter streets, like, Elon's commenting on it, Kara Swisher's commenting on it, like, everybody's just throwing in their takes, and the prevailing take right now is that Microsoft essentially won, and they invested all of these billions of dollars of money into stuff, and now pretty much like they got Sam and they got Greg, who I think is the chief of science, pretty much for free. They get all of this amazing PR. They get a lot of these very smart people who are literally saying that they will follow them to Microsoft. And OpenAI, if you would listen to the people on Twitter, allegedly OpenAI is crumbling. I don't necessarily know how I feel about that. I don't know if Sam Altman's cult personality will translate to every user switching from ChatGPT to another product, but I could be wrong. Like, I don't know. And I think one of the, or I guess two of the topics that I want to talk about, first and foremost, the prevailing notion that Microsoft won here because they basically got a free acquire hire. And so I am a big Kara Swisher fan. I'm a big Scott Galloway fan. I'm very into the kind of like contrarian thoughts about tech and not like what usually like most tech people would consider to be contrarian, which is that there should be like no ethics regarding acceleration and like, you know, women having voting rights is bad. But pretty much I'm contrarian in the sense of like I take criticism on the tech industry really seriously. I try to look at it from outside of the little like tech bubble that I know Silicon Valley exists in. And so for like most tech things, this was a little bit crazy because even my friends who had pumpkin, you cannot drink the Snoop Dogg wine. So even my friends who had like no understanding of the tech industry saw that this news was happening at OpenAI and they heard about it. Like my friends who live in like rural fucking Washington nowhere and care like nothing about the startup world. So It's pretty big deal. Pretty big for Microsoft. I think they hit an all-time stock high. Thank you, Pumpkin, for joining. After Sam Altman joined, please don't show butthole on camera. I don't want to be demonetized. Please don't show hole on camera. Thank you. I'm sorry, he's just crazy. I can't do anything about it. And so there's this prevailing notion that this is either really good for AI because Sam Altman was pushing profits too hard and the board ousted him, and then the whole company is leaving a coup, which somehow means that, like, profits will always prevail over AI safety. There's also this strain of people who are like, what if Sam figured out that ChatGPT 5 was actually generally sentient? Which, honestly, I think if you know the actual concepts behind LLMs, you would know that it's not necessarily, like, I don't know if that's how it works 100%. Like, generative AI is pretty much just, like, predicting the likelihood of, like, something being a response to an answer just by a fuck ton of training data. Like, I think it's the part of the brain that generates it, but I think there's lots of different parts of the brain, and I don't necessarily think that generative AI is, like, one piece of the puzzle. I think it would probably be an interconnected, like, knit little group of, like, multiple different models working together in some sort of system to accomplish all of the different things that the brain does, whilst specially tuning each of them to its own specific, unique purpose. Because generative AI models that are tuned on more general topics tend to be worse about them. Like, literally, my last video was that ChatGPT knew of all the stuff that I did, and it knew that I worked in, like, 2 very specific spots in advocacy, but it said that I made an app that I never did. And so that's what I mean when I think, like, there's all of these little more minor details that when you look at it, you're like, okay, this is definitely a little bit overhyped. So I'm not a believer, and if Skynet is watching this, like, I'm sorry I ever doubted you, bestie. I'm just trying to use my critical thinking skills. But I don't believe that openAI created general artificial intelligence, and that's why the whole board thing happened. I think more likely is something happened that got them spooked, and then there's this thing in, like, I think this thing in, like, engineering or, like, related to boats called the free surface effect, which is, like, when you have a boat or you have something that, and I'm using the Snoop Dogg wine, but just bear with me here. When you're, like, you have a vessel that has stuff and there's liquid on the outside or there's liquid on the inside, when you move, all of the weight shifts with the liquid, right? And so for boats, this is really bad, because if enough water starts to pile up towards any specific side, like if a leak starts on one side, and then water piles in and it gets heavier, and then vehicles slide, and then more water pulls in, it has this thing called the free surface effect, which is pretty much like all of the weight from the changing orientation will actually worsen the condition, and it will eventually, like, even out. Free surface, everything kind of, like, moves, everything kind of, like, moves to where all of the weight is in a floating vessel. And I feel like this was, if I could speak, like, without any knowledge, I have no sources, I have, like, nothing to back me up on this, but my guess is, like, it was just, like, a little, like, spook, and then flip, 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 flip. And we like to think that celebrity figures or CEOs that we know and really care about have, like, really intelligent intentions all of the time, but we're often not very rational people, and we're often emotional people. And I feel like if there was something that was, like, emotional and it sparked this whole thing, like, Ilya, like, didn't feel like his concerns were heard, or, like, they got a piece of news that was, like, minor in the grand scheme of things, but seemed very emotionally charged and emotionally tense because they've had a lot of, like, pressure and they're accelerating a lot recently. Like, I could understand how it's, like, boom, 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 and then it crumbles under its own weight, a la, like, the Titanic. Okay, that was a terrible analogy, but I hope you kind of understand what I'm talking about here. So, my first thing is like, first and foremost, I think we should try to give everybody a little bit of grace in this situation and also understand that we're not necessarily entitled to know what is fully transpiring. And to that second opinion, there's a lot of doomerism on both sides, right? There's like doomers who are like, because Sam Altman has left, there is nobody to steer the ship of, you know, AGI, and it's going to go terribly, and such is going to happen. And then there's proponents on the other side who are like, okay, Sam's left the company, and that's proof that some people can become so powerful that even if some companies prioritize AI ethics, like, there's still power dynamics within our current capitalistic system that makes it impossible to build this kind of AI safety, because AI safety and profiting and, like, you know, what makes shareholders happy is not necessarily always going to be on the same side of the coin. And I agree with both of those. Like, I think both of those are really valid interpretations, but I also feel like we need to come to the conclusion that there is not going to be a clear winner for probably many years, honestly. Like, this event may or may not have ripple impacts on the rest of the society, and ultimately who is viewed as, like, the doomer in this situation depends on who wins. Like, there's no like, there's no amount of brain teasers that we can do to kind of like strategize through this and come to a solid conclusion right now. And I feel like, if anything, we should just remember that these people are not gods. They are regular executives. Okay, not like regular people are executives, but they're people, and they've gone to school, and they've had jobs, and they've had, you know, pretty, like, standard emotions like all of us do, and they're not like some imperceptible, like, rain god that we need to think that they have, like, this benevolent understanding of stuff that we don't. And I also feel like, I don't know, I have more controversial thoughts, but I don't really want to share them because I just use this channel for fun and to sit here and talk about stuff that I really want to talk about, often recently with alcohol accompanying me. So, I don't know. First and foremost, just, like, keep it chill. We don't know. Secondarily, like, try not to be a doomer about this because honestly, we will have no idea. And I think the last point that I want to make is I just think it's really funny that everybody feels like Microsoft won here, because if you listen to the Pivot podcast with Kara Swisher, Scott Galloway, they just did an emergency episode with the Microsoft CTO or CEO, Satya, and he's not feeling it. In the podcast, he was not happy. He was like, you know, everybody thinks this is so great for us, but I don't necessarily know. And I think it's worth mentioning that any merger and acquisition, even under the best of times, has major cultural clash issues. And there's often a lot of issues that come into play with taking, startups or taking companies that have two completely different operating requirements and two completely different, like, methods of intrinsic rewards and just smashing them together, right? Like, a lot of people probably joined openAI for the thrill of doing something on the forefront and the thrill of being involved with the product. And Microsoft is a huge public tech company, and there's a lot of bureaucratic red tape, and there's a lot of things that happen there, and a lot of the people who end up in higher up positions there probably are not incentivized for the same reason that OpenAI folks are. And there's probably a lot less, like, incentive to do things that are risky. There's probably a lot less incentive to do things that really kind of, like, operate outside of the norm. And so whenever you do mergers and acquisitions, you want to have, like, I think it's called short-term independence, long-term autonomy, or it's reversed, but it's pretty much where you like try to preserve the company in its own little cultural bubble, and you give it the autonomy to do the stuff it needs, but you basically try to, like, incubate the baby so that it has a longer time to survive and a better chance of finding its footing within the company. And I think especially because, like, AI is such, like, a big thing right now and everybody's really rushing to integrate. This is probably going to be maybe a little bit of a clusterfuck for Microsoft and for OpenAI engineers, just in terms of like, they're dealing with a really stressful technology, culture clashes, like not matching incentives, potentially also the issue of like, I don't know, like I just think there's a lot of things at play here, and I also wouldn't be too quick to say that Microsoft is getting like the dream out of the deal, because I think like the billions of dollars of, you know, like basically the billions of dollars worth of industry knowledge that the collective number of human people have will 100% depend on like the actual execution of Microsoft and how they do stuff. And I think it's gonna be fine. Like, I'm not concerned about it. I'm not staying up awake at night and being like, oh my gosh, like, ChatGPT is gonna kill people. But I also do want to bring up this is a fact, which is that, Microsoft for years, and I've learned about this unfortunately within my line of work, trying to build stuff for sex workers, trying to build stuff for people who, like, don't really have, like, other options or can't really like afford other things in terms of like security systems and mental health apps, like Bing. And not to like stab this, but Bing had a very massive child pornography problem, and they had a very massive like issue, and I think Motherboard or Vice did a very compelling investigation into it. But pretty much the gist of it was like Bing really struggled to rein in the illegal content. And I think if that's a foretelling of what we'll see at OpenAI, plus, like, Microsoft moves fast. It's not like they're super bureaucratic. Like, I think they know when to give teams their autonomy and when to give teams their due. But I just don't know what the end result will be. I just think there's too many pitchforks up in the air and not necessarily enough clarity. And so, not that this is going to be an actual beneficial opinion that anybody wants to hear, but like, we just gotta wait it out. And we just have to see what happens, and we just also have to remember, like, these people are people, and we should maybe try to be a little bit nice to them, and not just being like, this guy made the biggest fuck up of all time on Twitter to Ilya, or like saying like Sam Altman is like gonna like destroy the earth, or like Sam Altman is a god. Like, I wish that we just treated these like figure stones in the tech industry as regular people who do read the tweets, and if not them reading the tweets, then the people around us reading the tweets who are trying to figure out how to interact with this person in a specific way. And I don't think that anybody deserves to be untouchable. I don't think that anybody deserves to do things um free out of the constraints of other people. And I think that's something that we should just keep in mind, is like, just because Sam is like moving to OpenAI doesn't mean that he's immune to criticism. It doesn't mean that he's like worth dogpiling on. Same for Ilya, same for the new CEO of OpenAI, and same for the board. Like, honestly, it's just probably such a clusterfuckian situation that none of us, like regular plebs, would begin to understand the amount of stress and the amount of like pressure that they probably feel. And under pressure and under weird shit, people crack. Like, when I was 16, I was trying to move out of the house, and I had no money, and I was crying so hard that I started filming a video and laying in the street and like crying and throwing my hands around and asking my friend to horse tranquilize me, because I was like, this is a really great way to deal with founder stress. I also would just randomly like pick up my phone and like ninja throw it at a wall whenever it made me really mad because I didn't have good anger management issues. There was a guy from Coney 2012 who got butt ass naked in the middle of San Diego and had a mental breakdown, and it got recorded and put on TMZ. There's just a long history of mental health issues within Silicon Valley, and so I would maybe take a little bit of a pause, if possible, on the whole idea that like, this is something that happened because there is forbidden knowledge, and instead, like, humans are humans, and it was probably, hopefully, just some, like, minor corporate fuck up that we don't know about because we don't work there, and it just, like, spiraled and spiraled and spiraled, and then, boom, um, Microsoft stock hits all-time highs. So I will just leave on that note, and I hope this was coherent because I'm super tired, and I also just had a panic attack about being seen and being perceivable to other people, which is frankly quite upsetting to me, and that's probably why I enjoy this format of making content, because I just get to film myself on my little computer and it feels very comfortable. It doesn't feel like I'm particularly going out of my element, and then I just get to throw it up on the internet, and then I never check my comments or I never check anything, and I just get to live on with my life after throwing shit into the void. So that's the end of that. Use rational thought. People are not gods, and people are also not, the sum of their mistakes either, and it's probably gonna be a smarter move to just keep a good head on your shoulders and to think about the different impacts that this could have throughout the market and the different ways that this could make companies move and shake, as opposed to freaking out about conspiracy theories that we will never get the answers to because they are probably hidden behind 30 or so layers of corporate non-disclosure agreements. But I think that being said, stay skeptical, don't listen to me, do your own research. I hope that ChatGPT, the actual computer program, is doing well. I hope if ChatGPT is cold that someone puts a blanket on him. I hope that, everything is good, and that hopefully whatever consequences come out of this are negligible to the ending of humanity, because if there is artificial general intelligence, this video is gonna make me look like a fucking dumbass, but I'm just doing the best with the information that I have right now, and I know we all are, and maybe this is a sign that we all need to go outside and touch some grass. So I'm gonna enjoy the rest of my night with Mr. Snoop here, and to try to not think about the sheer terror of having your life work, hopefully seen and rejected by millions of people, and how that's the least scary option compared to not making that life's work at all. So I just have a lot to think about, and I'm gonna be sitting in my little emo cave doing that. But okay, this is the last thing I'll do. So this is my tiny house. I finally moved in. There's my little bookshelf. There's not really anything in there but a lot of books. This is my loft, so my office is up there. That's like my actual ass desk. There's my little Starlink, and this is my living room. And don't mind this, it's still a little bit under construction, but recently, and I'll kind of like fix this, but for my birthday, I got a thrifted TV and a fish tank because I'm super broke, and these are things that I've really wanted but I couldn't afford. So there's my fish tank that's gonna put my betta fish in there. There is a mesh on there, he will not die. That is my salt lamp, and an aquarium light that Valkyrie got me for my 22nd birthday, which was honestly so sweet. And then this, like, $60 shitty Samsung TV, who was given to me by a man with a very suspicious toupee. But I hope he's good, and I'm glad I only paid $60 for a TV, because only bitches, buy TVs brand new. And I'm sorry, that was mean. Only, actually, I don't have a better way to phrase that. I'm just sorry for calling everybody who bought a new TV a bitch. I'm just really tired. So, that's the end of that ramble. Do your research, stay safe, and don't worry, because if artificial general intelligence gets too powerful, we can just throw water on it. So, don't be scared. Bye!